So one of the things I want to get into here is obviously we've talked a lot about everything but the book, I think, and even though a lot of stuff you're talking about is in your book.
Well, I guess everybody will have to go out and buy it.
Absolutely, that's why we keep holding it up and just showing it off, and then force everyone there. I'm not going to give the secret away that I told you earlier about the book too. So that's the.
I most appreciate.
That's no problem.
Everyone should know there is a Coles Notes version of the book at the end of it.
You're not supposed to say that.
I'm not supposed to say that?
No.
All right, I'm going to cut that one
Except
out.
A lot of people watching down in the U.S. don't know what Coles Notes are. So that's
okay. That's a Canadian term.
It's a Canadian term. But so the book itself, you've got 6 rules and kind of 23 principles that roll up into these rules. And I obviously we don't want to give away all 6 and then all 23, but maybe a couple of highlights of stuff that you have identified and come up with that you think are kind of hard hitting that people really have to seriously think about, especially with the new rules of marketing.
Yeah, maybe conversation starters, something like that. Yeah,
sure. Well, I'll give your listeners a little bit of insight. What the rules are really a way to simply provide, if you will, sort of an architecture to the principles. And so what I would encourage anybody who reads the book is worry less about the rules and worry more about really understanding the principles that sit underneath those. So the sort of the context, if you want to, if you will, differentiate the old way and compare it to the new way. I mean, the old way of marketing, and I'll just give a couple examples, is the old way for marketers was, budget at the end of the day defines what I do strategically. Or my brand is just a brand and it remains sort of fixed. It's not organic, it doesn't grow, it doesn't change over time. Another old way is that, all I really need to do is qualitative research. If I go out and do a couple focus groups, that's sufficient. And the answer, at the end of the day, tactically, in the old school was, it's all about advertising. Let me focus on selecting the right advertising agency and running some television or some print. And certainly, the old way, and we've spent quite a bit of time talking about it this morning, is, hey, marketing is an art, and it's not about measuring results. And then surprisingly, from my perspective, I'm astonished by the number of marketers who continue to believe that technology is only for the young. The reality is, and you guys may know this, the fastest growing segment of technology adoption within the consumer marketplace is, guess what market?
I'm guessing it's the baby boomers.
No, it's the senior citizen.
Senior? Gotcha. Well, I know they're the fastest adopters of Facebook, so...
In Canada,
right
especially.
now.
Yeah.
Right. So, if that's sort of, if you will, the backdrop for the old ways of doing things, the premise in the book is that there's a new way to do things, and it requires marketers to throw out much of what they hold dear and do 3 things: embrace technology, accept a new type of role within the company, with the acknowledgement that that role requires them to be held accountable. So if that's sort of the environmental change, and much of this is being driven by true macro trends. The macro trend caused by the changes that the Great Recession has brought about in our world, and the changes that have come about as the result of the way technology is now embedded, both within a company and outside by, consumers and businesses and how business transactions take place. So with that as sort of as the backdrop, I would argue that, all principles are important in this case, but there are some which are more important or certainly more impactful than others. So one of the things that the book deals with at some length is this concept of core essence. And early in the conversation, we were sort of talking about what the complexity was relative to products and services and industries and countries that I had at KPMG. Well, when you work within complex organizations, and again, that's not to say that this same principle does not relate to, mid-market or smaller enterprises. The absence of marketers' ability to articulate what the core essence of their brand is astonishing. They can't tell you what their brand is at its core, and I can tell you when a marketer can't tell you that, I can assure you that their customer or their prospect can't as well.
I'll tell you, if I'm in a marketing position and I can't tell you what the core of my brand is, I don't know why I'm working there, actually.
Well, you'd be surprised.
Well,
how many can't?
I would think too that a lot of companies might be reactionary, and they tend to get kind of wrapped up in a lot of the minutia of trying to keep up with dwindling sales, that they lose sight of where their brand is going.
And the problem is that if you don't have the core essence as sort of the center point, the anchor, if you will, for everything that they do, what you have is brand diffusion, brand sub-optimization, the management of the various products or services within the brand portfolio, aren't aligned properly. Something which is, maybe equally stunning, certainly is to me, is sort of complicit in somebody who can't articulate what the brand core is, are those that can't articulate what the value proposition is.
Hard to make sales for a company if you can't even articulate that. So,
if you don't understand what motivates the consumer or the customer within the context of the competitive space, ultimately why people buy your brand. I mean, how successful can you be with whatever you're doing tactically?
And that's clearly a carryover. So that's an old style marketing that's just being lost.
That is correct.
That's something that that was going to be my question, is like, what are some of the carryovers from old style marketing, or what are areas of marketing that have been lost over the time that might need to be revived?
3 martini lunches.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I watched that show Mad Men, and I wonder, it's amazing how much, if that's actually true, how much they were drinking back then, how much business actually got done. Anyways.
Well, here's, again, not to sort of go back and do a history lesson, but here's what I believe happened, because I get asked this question all the time, which is, why have you lost the things like positioning and core essence and value proposition? And here's sort of what I posit as the answer. For marketing departments, certainly in the United States, and this may or may not be true of Canada, I would think it would be, the grooming education that a marketer had, more often than not, were the training programs of the big multinational advertising agencies. So, you went to one of the multinationals and you were trained in media, and you were trained in account management, and you were trained in production. Well, what happened as the business model for the agencies began to get pressurized is the agencies increasingly stripped out not only the training programs, they stripped out the middle management, the account supervisors, the senior account executives, which was very hierarchical, because that was the structure put in place to marry up and align with the consumer package structure of, let's say, a Procter and Gamble. Well, when you lost that, what you lost was the natural migration that had taken place as people came out of those programs and went client side in the middle parts of their careers. Well, companies in of themselves, more often than not, don't have good training programs for marketers, because more often than not, marketers come to their jobs not particularly well prepared, not particularly well educated, because marketing is an art.
Yes,
it's not a science.
Yeah.